Automotive technicians are constantly adapting and learning about new vehicle technologies and systems. As electric vehicles go mainstream, vehicle owners are finding that not all service repair centers are capable or equipped to service those electric vehicles. Welcome to episode number 43 of Canada Talks Electric Cars webinar. Special welcome to those of you who are visiting our webinar for the first time, and welcome back to all the regular viewers. We appreciate you every time. So the skills required to expertly service electric vehicles create a new learning curve that requires proper training. This episode will explore some of that specialized training and examines the education, safety, service, and maintenance needed by technicians entering the field. As always, we invite you to participate today by submitting questions during the presentation using the Q&A button on the webinar toolbar, in the Zoom toolbar. We are very pleased to welcome back today David Giles to the webinar. I'll put links at the bottom of today's recording to Dave's previous appearances on the webinar, which include, by the way, a timely talk about operating EVs in winter weather. David has decades of experience in the transportation industry and is certified in education and EV-related trades. He is known as an educator, technician, innovator, entrepreneur, and a leader in electric transportation. As the current CEO and owner of PoweredEV Limited, he helps deliver cutting-edge resources to help improve skills in multiple trades. Dave also serves as an EV education specialist for Consulab. So Dave, welcome to the webinar.
Thanks, Tim, and welcome everyone. I'm just going to bring my screen up here. Good. Are we good?
I think we are good, and I will get out of the way.
Okay.
Thanks for your patience. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Sorry about that. Everyone is trying to get back in and wanted me to register as an invitee. So anyways, I'm Dave Giles. I want to get moving along here. This evening is right in my wheelhouse, being involved with automotive service and repair for well over 30 years, certified in a couple of different trades, one of them being automotive service technician, red seal designation, owning my own shops and dealing with electric vehicles in those shops, and also sitting on the board of directors with the apprenticeship agency and many other groups as well. So tonight I want to highlight some of the things about EVs, some of the things that we're going to be looking at, and from a consumer perspective as well. Like, what does it take for an automotive technician to get to that level of confidence and in comfort working with electric vehicles? And this is where a lot of misinformation comes out, especially with qualifications, certifications, and so on. So tonight we hopefully will clear some of that up and basically put technicians into the driver's seats of EVs and make them more accessible to servicing electric vehicles and make them more comfortable with servicing electric vehicles. So it's a bit of a mix tonight. I'm going to talk more about what the qualifications are, especially around EVs for technicians, but at the same time, going to be really, looking at through the eyes of the EV owner. One of the shops I dealt with before we passed it off the EV, all EV steel, was we have well over 500 EV customers in Atlantic Canada, and we're doing service and maintenance and tires and repairs and range right from basic tire rotations all the way to battery rebuilding. So in some cases we're replacing modules and component replacement and so on different BEV vehicles. So moving on, we're going to be looking at the training requirements for technicians. We're going to be looking at some of the certifications that are out there that might help you identify a shop that might have some training and some competency around electrification of repairs on your vehicle. And we're going to talk a little bit about the OEM versus the aftermarket service provider. So let's see, your typical, what we call mom pop shops, or your Midas or your Canadian Tires and so on. So the independent world, we usually reference it. And we're going to have some questions at the end I'm going to move quickly through the presentation. So at the end, we have a bit of time that you can ask your questions around anything to do with servicing your electric vehicle and what technicians need to understand and see with what your car requires. So let's move on. So I'm Dave Giles, as Tim mentioned. I work with many different companies. Recently, I just came back from Saudi Arabia, working with a couple big OEMs over there through a couple of consulting firms. So working with Lucid and Sear, in Saudi Arabia, which is very unique because typically, Saudi's a very big, rich oil country, and they're moving heavily into electrification. In fact, the Saudi government owns Lucid and Sear, and that's through the PIF, which is a public investment fund from the Saudi government. So work with a lot of other groups as well, helping with development of training, consulting, and so on. And I own my own company, PoweredEV, which is a consulting company, mostly dealing with technicians and industry and some of the changes that are happening with development of curriculum and that. But I also work with ConceLab. And ConceLab, if any of the technical schools, pretty much in North America, require training aids, and these training aids are developed by ConceLab. And they're just one of many companies out there that do these training aids. But ConceLab is right in Canada. They're in Quebec City, and they develop training components. I show a little video coming up in a second here on what ConceLab does for the technical training. In fact, right now they're developing products around EV training, which will, basically help teachers and instructors teach on this changing technology. So we can see there's a lot of different organizations I'm affiliated with in some level. Some are very little, others more involved with, but typically it's really neat because when you look at this, some of these you don't really recognize as being affiliated with electric vehicles. So so some of the ones we're talking about discovery centers, and we're talking about recycling, we're talking about, some of the standards with CSA, and then of course our associations and so on. So, we're involved with a lot of different aspects of the trades, with the industry, within government. So pretty exciting stuff. I was one of the original founders or partners with All EV Canada. We started this business in 2019. Focus was on adoption and education, late to Canada. We didn't have very many resources for electric vehicles. There wasn't very many dealerships selling electric vehicles, even new dealers. So we started All EV Canada as kind of a pioneer in Atlantic Canada, getting up and running, getting people comfortable with electric vehicles. And in just over less than 2 years, we, as myself and our two partners, we had we had 3 dealerships that we were starting to operate, and essentially it was sold to the Steel Auto Group in 2021. From there, it's now turned into Steel EV, and they continue to sell EVs through their dealer network of over 60 new dealers, and as well as used dealers as well. But the exciting thing with All EV Canada is we started a project called the Interactive Demo Electric Vehicle, which is the IDEV. And currently the IDEV comes in a couple different configurations. We had it as a cutaway vehicle, and we had a skateboard platform. And the idea with these was to help technicians gain an understanding of electric vehicles and how they worked and what they did, and and giving the inside scoop into an electric vehicle. So we took apart the battery modules, we took off the rear covers so you can see the motor drive units, we can see the electronics, the charging, how it works, air conditioning, and all these other aspects of an electric vehicle that we had in place. So it was really exciting, some of the stuff that we had going on here. So it's just a little bit of the 2 different platforms that we had. And moving on, ConceLab. And so, as I mentioned earlier, ConceLab has also taken the IDEV and developed a new training product, which is now being basically nationally, US and Canada. We see this one here going through different schools, technical trade schools, even high schools are buying these vehicles to help students learn about electric vehicles, transportation, and get them excited about the trades, especially in the automotive sector. ContiLab has been around since 1969. Deals with automotive technology for teachers, and just not on electrification. They also do a lot of other training products as well too for engine trainers and so on. And also involved with a lot of the skills competitions globally as well. So one in Canada, we have the ones in nationally, and then of course the World Skills, which I think this year's in France. So they'll send a team of, and some of their products, some of the competition, their products go into competition and are used for students to challenge themselves and challenge other competitors globally on electronics and vehicle technology and so on. So really cool stuff that ContiLab does. And I'm involved with the EV side of it, the EV education side of ContiLab. So yeah, move on. So I want to start off first off, just real quick. For those that you don't know what an automotive technician is, or obviously you know what an automotive technician does, but what they have to go through to obtain their certification, or what an EV technician requires to be able to service EV vehicles. We're going to talk a little bit about both of these areas. But in Canada, we have something we call an automotive service technician. Quebec has a little bit different program, but typically we call it a red seal program, which is a journey person, somebody that has met the qualifications required to become an automotive service technician and challenge what we call an interprovincial exam, which will give them the red seal designation. So in order to work on vehicles, whether it's cars, trucks, and so on, you have to be required to be an apprentice, registered, or be a red seal technician, or journey person, or equivalent to that, depending on the province you're at. So and this allows you to do different things to vehicles. Now, a lot of shops out there may have like a tire shop, or they're just doing accessories and so on. You don't have to be certified to do those types of things, but any other work that you do on a vehicle, you have to be certified in. So an automotive service technician requires certain level of schooling, and as well as hours in the field, demonstrating certain aspects about vehicles in order to move on through apprenticeship so they can write their exam. So typically it usually takes about 70 to 100 hours and about 4 levels of training in order to do that. So once again, it's a bit of a journey for most of them, and lots of investment, lots of hours, and a lot of upgrading as well too for automotive service technicians. So as we said, we will see more change in the next 5 years than there's been in the last 50. So this is where the rubber hits the road. And in the sense is technicians over the last 20 years, we've seen some changes with fuel injection, direct injection. We've seen more emission controls. We've seen changes with data communications with vehicles for diagnosing. But in the last 5 years, we've seen a rapid acceleration, especially in new alternative fuel technology, and one of them being electrification. Electrification has taken off immensely, and we hear about people talking about hydrogen and so on. But understanding hydrogen fuel cell, you're still dealing with electric vehicles. So, so that meaning that hydrogen fuel cells is basically an onboard range extender. And, so once again, we're seeing, technologies that are accelerating, but really focusing around that electrification of our industry. So that means that technicians not only have to deal with the systems from yesterday, but now they have to adopt the systems of today, which is becoming even more and more and more, and including even when we look at the ADAS systems, and those are the advanced driver assistance systems, with your radars, your LiDAR, your your proximity sensors and your lane keep and your full self-driving and all these things are all part of that technology. And technicians need to know that and be able to adopt and learn how to fix these systems. So once again, lots of things happening, very accelerated, the acceleration of learning, and technicians need to stay on top of this at all times in order to fix your vehicles. So what are some of the big things that we talk about in electrification, and what is the service technician challenge with? Because we hear about the terms when people say that electric cars, have a lot less moving parts and, don't need the type of maintenance that a regular car does. And that's somewhat true, but they've been replaced with other things. And that's something what this slide is going to show, because technically electric vehicles, there's no engine. There's no combustion engine in an electric vehicle. Hybrids still have it, but we're talking full, what we call battery electric vehicle. There's no engine components or related parts, so they've been eliminated, but they've been replaced with electric motors and electronics. So in order to drive the vehicle, we have electric drive units, we have controllers and so on to be able to drive those vehicles. Excuse me. Also, we see that electric vehicles don't have transmissions. They have gear reduction units in most cases. Even with the Porsche Taycan, with the 2-speed, it's really a 2-speed gear reduction unit. So we don't have the complexity of multi-speed transmissions. They've been replaced by direct drive or gear reduction units. No emission systems, they've been eliminated. So technicians don't need to deal with emission control systems like catalytic converters and EVAP systems and, and so on, EGR, and all of them have been eliminated from the engines because we don't have combustion. So, but they've been replaced by increased safety systems in an electric vehicle. So, so we're seeing more safety systems being installed and so on. To help drivers be, safe if they're involved in a collision, or even the vehicle itself, reducing the repairs and that needed to that vehicle. As well as no fuel systems or related parts. So they've been all eliminated, and we've replaced them with batteries and high voltage cables. There's no exhaust system. Once again, been eliminated because no combustion engine. No all-starter or alternator been eliminated from the gas, on the EV. So we don't have starter alternators to deal with, but we've replaced them with DC to DCs and contactors, converters, inverters, and so on. So we're seeing a little bit of, things that have been removed have been replaced with basically more advanced components in somewhat. What does that look like? We talk about the combustion engine and how many moving parts are in a combustion engine. As you can see there's a lot of things happening in order for the 6-cylinder engine to operate, with an overhead cam, lots of moving parts and so on, where an electric motor only has one moving part, basically the rotor itself. Kind of funny, because actually when I went to use this slide earlier, I wouldn't play both of them at the same time. So I'm actually getting away with this right now. So you can see there's only really one moving part in an electric motor. And so it eliminates a lot of the combustion engine components that typically on a conventional vehicle. So that means technicians, it almost looks like, well, hang on a second, what are we doing to help prepare them? Because it looks like a combustion engine vehicle or an ICE engine vehicle requires a lot more training than an EV. And somewhat true, a combustion engine does require more mechanical knowledge and fundamental knowledge and so on in order to service and repair, engine and transmissions and so on. But an electric vehicle poses a new challenge. And the new challenge is, when we start talking about high voltage systems, we talk about new types of equipment and so on, means that the technician is going to be challenged with those types of things, as well as servicing. Servicing on electric vehicles, once again, changing as well. So once again, your maintenance, services, repair, warranty work, inspection, and going into collision when you get your EV damaged, and who's going to fix that? So it's one thing we see in the collision industry. There's even going to be more scan tool usage. There's going to be more calibrations, and they also have to deal with the high voltage side of it as well too. So, but one thing is, it's really interesting is the cost of it, because one of the biggest investments in electrification for a technician and to prepare a technician for servicing is the cost involved. And the cost in training is significant, because you have your lost time when when the technician leaves the shop to go take the training. There's lost time, that means lost revenue, as well as the cost of their travel, the cost of the course, any material they need. And it's not just like a 1 or 2 day course and they become an EV specialist. In some cases, it can be hundreds of hours, depending on the type of course and the length of course and so on. So it can be a significant investment to a shop to have an EV certified technician or an EV qualified technician. And I'm going to talk about that certification in a second. So once again, substantial investment to a shop to be able to service an EV vehicle, to be able to accept it. And there's no different than any other system. The only difference is that the other system's been around a long time, and those fundamentals still play out. Doesn't matter what manufacturers do to a gasoline engine. They might change, designs and so on, and different types of injection system and for the fuel. But electric vehicles are a new fundamental that's being introduced, so they have to learn that new fundamental, and that's where a lot of this cost comes in, is to learning these new types of things. So what does it take to develop an EV technician? Typically, only rated seal technicians or experienced apprentices will perform high voltage work after training. So typically, they're not going to take a level 1 apprentice and start working on high voltage systems. Typically, it's a bit of a journey. Usually doesn't happen until a more experience with automotive, with other systems, before they start doing any kind of high voltage work. In some cases, dealerships and OEMs will not allow apprentices to do high voltage work until they become red seals, or until they get their journeyman license, depending on the province you're at. And it does take hours of fundamental training in electrical and mechanical systems. There's a lot of safety procedures that come in with developing EV technician. High voltage requires new processes for technicians, developing safe work zones in a shop and new shop equipment, depending on the type of work being done on the vehicle. Enhanced and new PPE equipment. So in some cases, arc flash protection may be required. High voltage installation gloves that need to be certified. These are some of the things that are required by, for an EV technician to be able to do some of this work. Scan tool, new learning and scan tools, new data lists, and so on, for technicians to learn about batteries and controllers and electronics in order to diagnose them. And of course, drive system electronics, including motors and controllers, are going to be new, because, once again, dealing with 3-phase induction permanent magnet motors, high voltage batteries, and so on. And I want to be careful here, because at the end of the day, this is when you're servicing high voltage systems. Anything with an orange cable is considered high voltage, and you'll require specialized training. But if a car comes into a shop and needs, tire rotation, brake caliper cleaning, maybe cabin air filter replacement, that's regular car stuff. There's nothing special about the cars to do that. Even lifting, some people go, well, the EVs need special lifting procedures. One, yes, they are heavy, but typically you follow the procedures in jacking lifting vehicles, no different than a BMW or a Mercedes. I had a Mercedes and it had special jacking pads in order to lift that vehicle. So, as we talk about Teslas, where you're actually the lift points are actually on the battery, other vehicles are on the pinch weld. So, and once again, technicians will have that information to be able to do that, to be able to lift the vehicle in the air, so that they can do your tires, your tire rotations, and your brake caliper servicing, and so on. But one thing about technicians they need to know about EVs, because one of the things that comes up is conventional ICE vehicle maintenance is a little different than electric vehicle maintenance. Once again, ICE customers are looking for reliability and longevity. Their oil changes, their coolant flushes, maintaining the vehicle's fluid levels in the transmission and so on, having that checked out, the air filters, and all these different services that are required for the reliability and longevity of that combustion engine. Electric vehicles are a little different. Customers that we had a little different insight into what that maintenance looks like. So EV customers typically are looking for efficiency and range. So technicians that understand electric vehicles would understand that efficiency and range is very important to an EV owner in a maintenance scenario. So they bring their cars in, they want tire rotation, they want have the vehicle checked over to make sure it's operating properly and so on. So once again, because typically EV owners watch that, the percentage or the range they have on their vehicle, or even the efficiency. I'm bad for that. I always watch my efficiency, see what I can get out of it, and if I notice there's a loss there, I might start looking at things like tire wear and so on, or alignments, or brake calipers seizing up or sticking or dragging. These are some of the things that can happen. So EV technicians would understand that requirement the customer may be looking for in that service. So what's the difference in dealing with EVs and ICE vehicles for maintenance? Basic services, no difference, in the sense that, all the same. Any level of technician, from an apprentice to a red seal journey person, can pretty much do all these, even with a very little, if no EV training at all. You can do your brakes, air filters, tires, fluid changes, alignments, and so on. Same as an ICE vehicle. And once again, they're going to follow procedures. Technicians just don't remember how to do every vehicle. They actually have to access service information, which will tell them, how to do that service. Now, if they go to do a brake service and involves doing something with the high voltage system, then at that point they'll say, we can't do that. We just don't have the training for that. But in most cases, a lot of these services can be done by a regular technician. But once HV or high voltage is required to be touched, high voltage cable and so on, a component replacement that carries high voltage or stores it, then specialized training is required. So it's very important that, so the technician that has that level of training, and go one step further, if they're servicing a battery, internally in a battery, then it even requires more safety, more procedures, and specialized training in order to do that, as well as equipment and that to do that type of work. So what is Canada doing to help technicians prepare for EVs? So one of the big things is we have our occupational standards in Canada for service technicians. There's the Red Seal website there. And right now, under the harmonized program, which means all provinces are following the same kind of structure for the training, there is a designated area for hybrids and battery electric vehicles. So as we see some of this trade stuff starting to come in play, apprenticeship is starting to teach more about it. It's starting to go into the schools, and some of the training aids that ConceLab supplies, and some of the curriculum, and instructors are getting more confident with teaching EVs. Then we're going to see more of that in within the apprenticeship division. But we have to be aware too that apprenticeship doesn't give all the training to a technician. In fact, only 15% of the required training is covered by the school itself. So that means only 15% of the information that technician receives in the fundamentals comes from the school. 85% of it is done on the job. And that can be a challenge if a shop isn't bringing in electric vehicles for servicing, technician never sees one, and it can be a bit of a challenge for them to learn about electric vehicles because they're just not doing them in that industry. So it takes that confidence and that other training that happens to get a technician confident to be able to service and work on electric vehicles. So specialized training is often required to become proficient in EVs. So we have automotive service providers and OEM training for technicians. Now dealers receive training on their own products and become certified with that brand only. Once a Toyota technician becomes certified as an EV specialist in their line, and they can be a master EV technician or a hybrid technician, they're certified. If they go over to Chrysler, that certification doesn't carry over to Chrysler. They would have to now go through Chrysler's training to become certified in order to work on EVs within that dealer network or that manufacturer brand. So it's important that they will receive their own certifications through each of their own brands. Automotive service providers usually gain training through night classes and online training through various brands. So they're learning on a lot of different vehicles, because if you're working at an independent shop, you could see a Bolt, a Tesla, a Kona, an Ionic all in the same day. So so once again, so technicians are getting a lot broader range in the aftermarket industry, where the OEMs are dealing directly with that line of manufactured vehicles that they're being trained on. But like I said, either of them, when they get their certifications and their certificates and so on, that's within their own groups that they're getting that. So let me explain in a second. Does Canada have an official certification for EV technician? And short answer is no, they do not. We do not. In Canada, you do not need a special license to work on EVs. Typically, it comes down to the competency of the technician working on that vehicle. So technical schools may give certificates, micro credentials in high voltage safety, EV certification, once that student's met all the outcomes, but it's not a requirement in our trade. It just means that as a consumer, if you own an EV and you go to a shop, and you see that they have certification, you can be confident that they've gone through some sort of training program to be familiar with your vehicle. Some parts suppliers have come to the table and offered training with certification on high voltage service. But once again, it's not standardized. So that means that there's various different types of training that the aftermarket will supply. Associations are offering support for training suppliers and partnerships, that a technician can obtain a recognition of being EV specialized. So meaning that they're developing their own training certifications to help consumers recognize if they met a certain level of competency within that group. A group I'm working with right now is CSA. I'm working on several different projects with CSA, but once again, they're going to have, first time ever for the auto industry, really, is a CSA certification for a high voltage technician. Once again, they can challenge an exam. You have to be a red seal or equivalent in order to challenge the exam. But once again, it's not mandatory to take it. But once again, it's allowing the consumer to recognize if a technician has, obtained a certain level of knowledge in order to pass that exam for CSA. And we recognize CSA as a household name, electrical usually, but a lot of standards is where they come from. So they don't do training, but they're offering it as a certification process that can be recognized by a consumer that shop has met some of those certification requirements. And of course, OEMs require their technicians to work on EVs in their brand to be certified, but only applies to that manufacturer. And once again, not all manufacturers, but some manufacturers require the technician to go through a certain level of training within their own group, whether they're going through their different stages of learning electrical and so on, and then they can go for high voltage, or they have to be red seal in order to be able to service those high voltage, do the repairs on a high voltage vehicle. So does that mean that anybody can work on an EV? Because it doesn't look like there's any kind of certification for EVs. And of course, no. Same rules apply to ICE vehicles. any person working on a vehicle in Canada within a provincial jurisdiction must be registered as an apprentice, have a work permit of some sort to work in that trade, or be a journey person. So that journey person being certified will allow them to work on that brand and still must have apprentice and journey person status. So once again, if you're working electric vehicles, say I'm just going to work on electric vehicles, I'm not going to do ICE vehicles, you still have to be meet all the requirements under the provincial regulations to work on a vehicle, same as a gas-powered vehicle. The good news is that a dealer that sells an EV has to be certified. So in order to sell an EV, they have to be certified. So if you see dealer that has EVs on their lot, that means their technicians are certified. Otherwise, they cannot sell an EV if they don't have a certified technician in their base. And the reason for that is they can't sell a car, have a warranty problem, and then tell that tell that customer that we have nobody here to service it, you're going to have to send it to the other end of the country. So in order to sell that vehicle on a dealer lot, most manufacturers will require the dealer to have certified technicians, which is a big investment for a dealership. So you have to realize it's not free to the dealers either. They have to pay for that training. Once again, Automotive Apprenticeship is developing more training resources for teachers teach about EVs. Aftermarket training, not dealer, are offering training for technicians work in the field on EVs. And once again, if you're not sure, ask questions to the shop that you're considering servicing your vehicle about what they know about your car. If they have any training technicians, do they have any certificates? Have they taken any course about your vehicle and how to service your vehicle? And even just simple services. Like, I hear all the time about people lifting my car. Do you know how to lift my car? Once again, it's instilling that confidence in the consumer to make sure they understand, what to do with that vehicle. Once again, and basic services, as I mentioned, can be treated like any other vehicle. AIA has done a report just recently. You can go online and read that report. It's a report on consumers, the impact of electric vehicles on Canadian consumers, and how consumers look at repair facilities and repairing their vehicles. It's a great report. It was really interesting. And one thing I really like about it is that, and I hear this all the time from shops, is that people are bringing us their electric vehicles and they actually know more about the electric vehicles than we do, and we service them. And because customers are becoming more savvy, they're researching their vehicles, they're researching different areas of the vehicles, and and they're going to start asking those questions, which is really important. And being tech savvy, doing those online servicing, and setting appointments, and and knowing what your vehicle needs is very important. So really, there's 3 pillars in technician in order to work on your vehicle, or a technician that is being developed for EV service. Is they need lots of training. Training is paramount. It's important. They need the proper equipment and they need the proper information. If one of these things isn't there or is missing, then it makes it very difficult. So you can have all the equipment in the world, all the information in the world, but without any training, what do you do with the equipment? How do you use that information? Likewise, you can have all the training and information, but you have no equipment to do it. So, and of course, you can have all the training equipment with no information, which actually can be very dangerous. So one thing I want to leave with you tonight is I give a little tidbit. If you have a Tesla, or if you're a service shop and you're servicing vehicles, you want to get into it, Tesla's service information is completely free. They offer all their service manuals online, free of charge. So you can just go to www.service.tesla.com. Basically register. You have to register yourself. It doesn't cost anything. And you have access to all the Tesla models and all the Tesla service information. And if you're an enthusiast or you own a vehicle and you want to take it into a shop, and you might want to, the shop says, well, we can't, we just don't know how to do that work, or we don't have that information, you can provide them the link and it'll give them the instructions that they need in order to service that vehicle. So I'm going to leave it at that this moment. I'm going to open it up for any questions that you may have, and hopefully I can hopefully answer some of those questions for you.
Thanks, Dave. That's wonderful. You can end your screen share now, if you would,
Oh, yeah.
and I'll call on Chris Guernsey. Chris, we're a little bit late, but that's because of the glitch. So we're going to make an executive decision, and we'll run this 5 minutes later. So we'll end this at 35 minutes past the hour, and I'll let you. I see we've got a lot of questions. I'll let you go at them.
Sounds good. I am going to fall on my sword and admit that as the person who is normally in the background and does the technical stuff, the glitches were entirely my fault. So I
That's
thank
okay.
everyone for that. But having said that, let's just dive right in. So the first question that we have is, what types of repairs to EVs can we take to ordinary or legacy auto repair garages? Things like tires or perhaps brakes, or what type of repairs could we take to a normal shop?
And that's a great question. And it comes back to warranty on these vehicles. Warranty is crazy on some of these cars. You hear about their warranties, 160,000 kilometers or 8 years, even pushing up to 195,000 kilometers or 8 years. And people believe that, because of that, and those are only powertrain and battery warranties. Usually the bumper to bumper warranties are about the same as a normal conventional vehicle, usually 80,000 kilometers or 8 years. But once you hit past that point, really any service provider still can do your brakes, your tires, your basic services like alignments and so on. You don't need to take it to a dealer, when you get into those types of repairs. But definitely when you start getting to high voltage, if you're running into a problem with your battery, you're not getting the range on your battery, you're running into issues with, maybe you're making a weird noise when you're driving. That's when you want to make sure that the shop that you're taking it to, and every shop is as capable of doing it. It depends on their level of confidence and what kind of certifications they have and what kind of experience they have as well. You will find a lot of independent shops, not dealers, that technicians work at, have worked at dealers in the past. So some of these shops may have the technicians may have a level of certification from an OEM, and now they're working in the aftermarket industry. And a lot of times they'll display that. And just doing that conversation with the service advisor sometimes great, because they'll say, hey, yeah, we got a guy here that's worked for GM for 10 years, and he's EV specialist with GM, and now he works for us. So so really any of those services can be done by a shop that has competent and qualified technicians working at them.
Very cool. Thank you. Would it be fair to say that something like a window actuator or something like that, that's kind of normal parts, would be also things that any shop should be able to do?
Yeah. Anything that's outside that warranty period. So, like if your window stops working at 50,000 kilometers and you're within that range, then of course you're probably going to go back to the dealer because it's probably under warranty. But once it leaves that warranty, then really, unless it's a powertrain issue or a battery issue, any service center should be able to service that vehicle.
Awesome. So question number two, are you aware of a diagnostic tool, for example, Snap-on OBD2 diagnostic tool or similar, that can measure state of health of EV traction batteries?
I get that all the time. Yeah. So there is tools out there now that's not as easy as just plugging in a dongle and hoping for the best. There is apps out there, like if you're not familiar with Leafs, Nissan Leaf has a program called Leaf Spy. It's free. You need a dongle. It will display battery health on the Leaf on that application. Scan My Tesla is for the Tesla ones. It's about $15. You can get in that one. It'll give you a battery health. Now, mind you, Teslas will do it on screen anyways now. The special mode that you can go into. But speaking back, is one, OBD2 really doesn't exist with EVs, because onboard diagnostics was designed for emission related vehicles. And because of that, they're not required to, some of these vehicles are not required to have a 16-pin diagnostic connector, not by the rules of California Air Resource Board, who operates and runs OBD programs. So the thing is that, so getting that battery state of health, and to answer that question, a TEL is a scanner I know of that actually has an off-board tester for checking battery state of health. It's not perfect, but once again, there is it's a lot of training, understanding diagnostic information from the battery module, proper charge rates within the vehicle. So some of them require you to fully charge battery and then discharge it while doing a special procedure in order to measure the battery state of health. But once again, it's what I tell people, the quickest way is you can charge your vehicle right up to 100%. Look at what the EPA is. And if your vehicle's at 100% and it's like a 460 kilometers, EPA is 500. The difference of that is kinda, what your expected range is. The only thing you have to do is, as a service technician or service shop, you have to clear the BMS's memory, or else you could get false readings. So it's one of those areas. Battery state of health is a subject on its own completely. But is there a scanner out there that you can just plug in and get all the vehicle battery health right now? They're trying, it's getting there, but once again, I think the one scanner that comes to mind is the Atel scan tool, so the EV scanner that they have, but it's not as simple as just plugging it in. Sometimes you're actually interfacing into the BMS system, plugging into the CAN bus, and so on. So
Cool. Okay, so next, will the system for training for EV technicians be just for EV electrical system, or will it eventually become a part of the overall mechanics programs and apprentice system already in place?
yeah, so right now it is technically, as provinces start to adopt high voltage service into their programs. Yes, definitely we'll see more and more EV training happening at the apprenticeship level. But once again, the learning is only fundamental learning. A lot of times the apprenticeship, even though I showed the screen there, you can visit the red seal.ca website. You can look at the occupational standard, which what technicians required to have and what schools are teaching. But once again, it's only high level, a lot of it, because they got so many other things they have to learn about. So once again, it's back to the technician doing a lot more, doing going to those training courses I mentioned earlier, and finding that extra training to become more proficient. But we're going to see more and more EV training definitely within the apprenticeship system and training trades within the colleges. And that's who I deal with mostly right now, is a lot of colleges and technical institutions, and they're really starting to ramp up in their EV training. So
Cool. So comment and a question. And I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. I hear from a lot of mechanics who are older and have no interest in working on high voltage electrical systems. Is that going to be an issue in the short term, keeping EVs in good repair? And how do we get those people to have interest in working on the drivetrain systems of newer cars?
another good question is that, good news is the electrification of the drivetrains is the very least of repairs on EVs. So that's the good news. So very few failures you'll get with high voltage batteries in today's vehicles. Motor drive units, controllers, inverters, DC DCs, and charging, and all these systems are pretty good. It's a regular vehicle that still needs that maintenance, the ball joints, the tie rod ends, the brakes, suspension components, all these other aspects are no different than yesterday's vehicles. So when a technician says, no, we do not work on electric vehicles, well, the customer goes, well, I just need, my tires rotated. There should be no reason why they can't bring that vehicle in to do that simple service of a tire rotation. So sometimes it's about that, not the hate within the vehicle. So they don't like EVs and that, but as a service technician, I like, there's certain vehicles I'm not fans of, but I know that they're that's how I make my bread and butter. So, all opinions aside, whatever comes through the door, I should be accepting that. And to speak on that is that as the older generation of technicians move on, we are starting to run into a shortage of technicians in this trade. So it's not just, exciting those guys, it's how do we excite the younger generations to adopt into automotive service trades. So, whether it's collision, truck and transport, auto service repair, it's, getting there. So we see a lot of exciting things with electric vehicles and performance and power and simplicity and cleanliness. But once again, it's just attracting those young people to take the spots of the aging generation of technicians. So
Cool. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit of the next one as well. I went to a dealer and sadly I felt like I was better informed than my local Chevy dealer who was supposed to be certified to work on my Chevy Bolt. Is there any way of either being able to clearly tell or having some sort of clear label to identify dealers who actually have highly trained technicians as opposed to, maybe being EV certified but not actually having the knowledge?
one thing I do recommend people have EVs, the associations are great resources, groups, like, down here we have EVAC. I see all the time them sharing back and forth about experiences they've had, places to go to. But like I said, at a dealer level, if a dealership is selling electric vehicles on their lot, their technicians have met a certain level of competency in order for that dealer to have a license to be able to sell EVs. So, if a dealership to bring your car in and they don't sell electric vehicles and they have no interest in it, there's highly unlikely that they have a technician in the back that is certified on your vehicle. So, so it might be a little bit of shopping around. It's just like any other trade in that you could go to one dentist, they're fantastic, next dentist, even though they're certified, might not be that great. So, you might have to do a little bit of shopping, but word of mouth is a great thing as well, too, especially in the EV world. I find there's way more chatter going back and forth with the EV owners than there is typical traditional ICE vehicle owners. So
Good advice. Next question. Why do some 12-volt batteries burn out so much sooner in EVs than they do in ICE cars?
The 12-volt battery is a lot smaller in an EV, first of all. They're only tiny, because the only thing the 12-volt battery is designed to do is essentially turn on the high voltage system. And then when the high voltage system turns on, then the DC to DC takes over. And just like an alternator in a gas-powered vehicle. But typically, the small lead acid battery, in some cases, they're just not a very big battery. And so depending, on the use of it, how long the car sits and so on. That's why one of the maintenance items, actually, it's funny, I just was talking to a shop about that. One of the maintenance items I have for when you're getting your tires changed over is to test that 12-volt system battery. On the vehicle. I know some of the newer ones have gone to 16 volts nominally with the lithium 12-volt low voltage battery, but once again, have them test the battery. So maintaining the battery is no different than an ICE vehicle battery, except it has to do less work, which means it's smaller, but it's more prone to damage if something's left on, or if the battery, something is, forget the lights on, or you're running it with the high voltage system on, they're just not designed to do that. Not like the larger conventional ICE batteries that have a lot of storage capacity or amp hours in them.
Chris, can we do, I think, do one more question?
Again, this is an interesting question. Would it be, and I think I know the answer to it, but I'll let you take a swing at it anyway. Would it be easier to provide an electrical professional training in vehicle systems versus training a car tech mechanic about electrical HV systems and components?
Well, that's a good question. I see that, they're trying to go to electricians to pull them from the industry to work on vehicles. There's a lot of dynamics. In order to service an electric vehicle, you have to understand the fundamentals of the car itself. So your steering, your braking, your suspension, the electrical. And one thing about electricians, which a lot of people don't realize, is they don't deal with a lot of DC voltage. So, so once again, that's a little bit of a challenge for them too. When we look at DC voltage, they're sometimes like, whoa, like, we don't really understand that and so on. And it is changing now. We see in the electrical code, they've added DC voltage in the last revision and this revision as well. But so yeah, it's not the same. It's not the same kind of electricity that we're dealing with in that sense. So, we have mobile electricity rolling down the road compared to stationary electricity, and a lot more dynamics involved with that. But I have heard electricians that have gone into the automotive service repair, but they still have to go through all the other systems, right from combustion engines to diesels to transmissions. It's all part of the trade, and electrification is just a section of the trade in the powering of the vehicle. So
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dave. Thanks, Chris. I should have pointed out Chris jumped in today to stand in for Jason Arnaud, who usually does the Q&A. Chris is usually the technical guy, so we'll have to have a chat about that. Anyway, appreciate it, Chris. Thank you. And Dave, thanks again. Really informative, very interesting. Very quickly, how can a young person, say high school age, learn about all these available courses and training if they decide they want to go in that direction?
Well, there's great groups out there. I know that some of the associations out there, like the Automotive Sector Councils that are out there, they have youth programs. I've seen them, at different levels. Get involved with your shop. High schools are seeing more automotive related trades because the industry is requiring them. So, once again, check with the high school, join the, one of the automotive programs if that high school has it. And also reach out to even shops in the area. If you're high school age, they're always looking for co-op students, and what a great opportunity to learn, especially if they're interested in EVs or even electrification. Sometimes the shops say, hey, we got a young guy that's super keen on electrification. We have nobody here interested. Let's bring him in and let's see, if we can mold them into becoming a service technician for us. So.
Right, great. Also, the other interesting or really good organization around EVs that you can reach out to for help is called Electric Vehicle Society.
Perfect.
I thought I'd mention that. Anyway, thanks again. Appreciate it very, very much.
Yeah, and just want to say one more thing, Chris. There's no such thing as glitches. They're called features.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
It's coming out of his pay anyway. All right.
Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. And if anybody has any comments or questions, I think Tim's going to be putting my email and contact information out there, and feel free to reach out for sure.
All the links and contact info will be in the notes when this gets posted on our playlist, on YouTube playlist. So
great.
All right, so next month on Canada Talks Electric Cars, we're going to welcome Kenneth Bacor, who's creator, producer, and host of the popular YouTube channel, The EV Revolution Show. As a lot of you will know, Kenneth is a member of the Automobile Journalists Association of Canada and also the Automotive Press Association. As such, he'll be sharing he has a really special and broad perspective on the EV landscape in Canada, and he'll give us an idea what we might expect in the coming year. So remember to mark that date. It's Tuesday, January 2nd, always 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So on behalf of all of us at Electric Vehicle Society, thanks for joining us today. We do wish you and your family an absolutely fantastic and wonderful holiday season, as well as a very healthy, happy, and prosperous new year. So thanks for joining us. This will conclude today's webinar.